of the territories. Most smaller territories, and I'm talking about Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, had a 3-month booking window. And they would know 12 weeks from now, we're going to end. Dick Slater, Ricky Steamboat's going to end in a bunkhouse match in all the towns, and they would book themselves backwards so that they knew where they were going to go. They gave the wrestlers all the, they knew what their ending was. They knew how. So basically, it started out as an angle. So and then it became a program, and then they had the blow off, which was called the blow off. That was the basic deal, and every territory had the same thing. WWF had a 6-month run. Theirs would always run 6 months because they wouldn't run the towns a lot. Is that being done? Is there long-term booking, or are they booking today, week by week, show by show?
I think they have some things planned well in advance with WWE. I think they have a general idea from one WrestleMania to the next, what they're looking for. I don't think they're as set in stone as they used to be. I think Vince has become more flexible in that aspect as he's gotten older, and he started listening to the crowd a little bit more. And you can argue social media hurting the business or helping the business, whatever, but fans really have a voice now that they never had before.
Yes.
And it's taken WWE a while to actually listen to it. And we talked about this last week about the whole Daniel Bryan deal where Vince just didn't see the future in him. But the fans were, they were rabid about the guy. So he eventually had no choice but to push him. And I think he listens more. But then on the other hand, I think he cuts things a little too short sometimes because he may not see the potential in it, or the talents are not getting that almost immediate response he thinks they should. Ricochet is a good example of that. He was hot. He was good. He was getting over good. He wasn't getting over great, but there was a ton of potential to him. But for whatever reason, Vince just decided to, pull that plug on him.
Well, do you think that the people who are promoting wrestling today, and I'm talking about the independents, do you think they know the concept of what wrestling was? Do you think they understand the booking concept of it has to have an end first, and then you have a middle, and then there's do you think they understand angle, program, blow off?
Some do. You've got guys, Q-Ball Carmichael up in Carolinas. He's not running anything right now, but he did for years. And we share the same philosophy, about the business. Rudy Gonzalez is running out in Texas. He's an older guy. He's been around. He uses that same style. That's what I do. And I'm telling you, guys are amazed when I set them down and I start laying out, what we're doing, 6, 8 shows down the road with them. And they're like, well, how'd you do this? And I'm like, well, how do you not? I mean, your dad is the one who set me down and showed me this, wrote it out, showed me how it worked. And, and that's just, I never thought about doing anything other than that because it works.
Well, I mean, that's basic writing. If you're writing a book, you're going to have the end first. And then you're gonna know how you're gonna start it. You know how you're gonna end it. And then back then the wrestlers would fill in the middle. I mean, the wrestlers would actually fill in the middle because they knew they were going to end here, so they knew what they needed to work towards. I mean, there may be a 4-week, just a little bit of more of an angle to just push it more. Then there may be another one 8 weeks, but then on that 12th week it was going to be the blow off, and they tried to really step them out so not everything was ending at the same time. And today, unfortunately, I'll notice when they do something, they end it on a month and they have to start right back over again without having anything to come back with. And I think that would help them if they would stretch some of the stuff out, not do it all, and end it all in one pay-per-view. Because I don't think every match has to be a main event match. I don't think it ever has been able to. Yes, Susan Renee, not all stories have to end each time there's a pay-per-view. Give us the story, a slow burn story and carries on, real played out rivalries that build over some time. Yes, Susan, I think that is what they're, and see, I think they could go from the 800,000 people who watch the show each week. I think that's what on average is watching the show each week now. maybe a little bit more on Raw. But I think if they would just start developing characters, because what do people pay for? They don't really care about the wrestling match. They really don't.
No.
They care about when Wrestling 2 was in Atlanta, they cared about Wrestling 2. They built him where they loved him. So when the superstar came to town, they didn't have to have what Dave Mezer said it was 5-star matches, because the matches meant nothing. Yeah. They were good to have, and if you had a great match, that was great. But Superstar Wrestling 2 is what drew it in there. And now they had great matches. Now, I'm not saying they didn't have great matches, but it didn't matter. Les Thornton and somebody on the first match could have the greatest match on the card. But just because Les Thornton had the greatest matches on the card didn't mean he could draw any money, because he had no personality to go with that great wrestling. And so it's always about personalities. Tommy Rich and Buzz Sawyer drew money because you put those two personalities together, and it's all about personality and stories. Now, you don't want wrestlers that are horrible by no stretch. You don't want Van Hammer. If anybody remembers him out there.
I do.
So yeah. And I think she's right. I think she's right. You have to get people engaged in the story about why do these two hate each other, the backstory like the old days. And I think that's common. And I think there needs to be a differentiation between heels and baby faces. You need to know this shades of gray. That just really doesn't work, because you're never going to. You can have a couple of those matches, but you can't have them on a daily basis. What do you think about that, Jack?
Yeah, I think one of the things we're missing, not just in storytelling from what we were to what we are now, is just that emotional investment from the crowd. It just don't seem like most of the characters today, and it's not their fault. I mentioned this, when we were talking beforehand, they're just doing what they're told. But the emphasis is on the company, not those individual wrestlers anymore. And now kids, they pick up, they like the way somebody looks, they like the way somebody dresses, and that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But adults want to be emotionally involved, invested in those characters. That's why we still go to Star Wars. That's why we still love Indiana Jones and Rocky, and Rambo. I mean, we identify with those characters, and we want to see them, make those comebacks. And I think that's missing a lot today. There's so much potential out there. Daniel Bryan is one of those few that have that connection still with fans, and you can see that when he comes out. But overall, you just don't have it.
And I think that's true. Kevin Tubbs said you have to care about one and hate the other, and they have to be able to perform. Hey, I agree. I think it's important for them to be able to wrestle, but it's not 50% did they have to be able to perform, because Jim Duggan wasn't the greatest wrestler in the world. But for some reason, Jim Duggan in Louisiana, he connected with the people and really and truly had some really bad matches. Now, he was on the main event. Punches looked pretty bad, but he was over. He was over for some reason, and I never really saw why. We were there for a year and a half. I never really saw why Jim Duggan was over. I know why the Rock and Roll Express was over, because them and the Midnight Express had some of the greatest matches in the history of the wrestling business. And then when Ted DiBiase worked against Hacksaw Jim Duggan, spectacular matches. I mean, they had some good matches. They didn't draw what they had done the first time, and this was 1985, I believe. They came back, and Duggan got beat up in the parking lot, and they did something like that, which was another one of them unbelievable things that happened in wrestling. So they were doing them back then too, folks. And it did not draw. And unfortunately, the Dusty Rhodes, Ole Anderson angle we talked about before, which was a great angle, really never drew the money that it did the first time they did it, because they jumped Dusty Rhodes in the parking lot. It never did draw the money the second time. I think it's because it made Dusty look really, really bad. I think it made him look stupid to be in the ring with 6 guys that were somebody that didn't like him in the past. So I don't think it helped Dusty out at all. And that was very surprising to us. that he didn't draw. The Roddy Piper, Bob Armstrong in Georgia never drew the money it was supposed to because people didn't know Roddy Piper was a professional wrestler. So they figured, well, Bob's going to kill him. You know, there's a couple other things come up. At the end of the day, professional wrestling is storytelling played out in a square circle and solved with physicality. Hey, by the way, that's exactly what they say on WWE's. So if you're investing in WWE, they actually say that on there if you want to invest in their product. Israel Napier, WCW had great talent. They never knew how to use them. They had people in the wrong places. And you're right, they had people that didn't care about the business. Your older guys had compassion for the business. Today's different day, different time. I agree. Don't you agree with that, Jack?
I do.
Oh, there's old Tim Horner. Hey, Tim, how you doing,
brother?
We need to get you on here and we need to talk to you. We're doing a show on Continental Championship Wrestling every Thursday. And I think Mitch Lucas that is the host of that, but we do it every week, and we would like to talk to you about matches you have with Tom Pritchard, Roy Lee Welch, and a bunch of others. Tim Horner said there is no true heel or babyface anymore. Wrestling has always been good versus bad. It's just hard to distinguish who is who. And Tim Horner, you are exactly right. They just need. Let me tell you, when we used to use Jack, you knew he was a bad guy because he did bad guy stuff. He would choke you with something. He would hit you with something. He would cheat, and if he was the manager, he would really cheat during the match to get somebody over. And I think that's very important. Tim, thank you so much for coming on here and telling us about the wrestling business. There's no one that knows wrestling better than Tim Horner.